Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfing, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello, my friends. Oh my gosh, I have the coolest podcast episode you guys are about to listen to. I am so excited because we are going to talk about forest bathing. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to all of you, our amazing listeners. If this is your first time tuning into the show, welcome. I am so glad you have found us. If you listen to us week after week, it's nice to have you back. Thank you for listening to our show. We do have this new feature. If you want to give us fan mail, there is a way in the show notes. I'll post a link. You can actually send us a text. I actually don't get any of your contact information, so it's totally anonymous. I don't even know your phone number, but the system allows you to send us feedback, ask questions, or just send us some fan love. Why not? If you let us know where you're calling from and you want to share a first name, I'll give you a shout out in next week's episode. I also encourage you to head over to survivingbreastcancer.org/events, where you'll be able to see the lineup of all of our programs, everything from support groups to expressive writing, art therapy, yoga, meditation, so many great resources for you. So that's survivingbreastcancer.org/events. And last but not least, feel free to follow us on social media. We are loving to connect with you on our community, on social, and ways to DM and stay in contact. So yeah, all the things, they'll be there in the show notes for you below. But back to forest bathing. I did not know what forest bathing was. And then I met the amazing Regan Stacey, who is our guest today on today's episode. I am totally 100% sold on everything that she talks about. And I love her program. I'm so excited that she has been doing forest bathing for survivingbreastcancer.org. And I really hope you enjoy today's episode. Before we get started, I also want to share that this is one of those episodes you may want to actually listen to outside. So if you're in your car or if you're driving or inside your house, just listen to the podcast. Totally get it. Totally fine. However, if you have an opportunity, maybe this is your time to take your 20-minute walk, get outside, get into nature. This is one of those episodes where you definitely want to be outside in nature and experience this really beautiful conversation we have today. All right. So who is Regan? Regan is an artist and advocate for Earth, whose passion is to reconnect humans to nature for personal, collective, and planetary well-being. She is the founder of the Earth Song Project, an initiative offering mindful nature connection through guided forest walks, retreats, and courses designed to nourish a sacred life. She is also the co-founder of the Forest Therapy School, teaching people to guide mindful walks with nature in their communities. Regan holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology and a Master's of Fine Arts in Visual Studies, and is currently pursuing a Master's of Science in Philosophy, Science, and Religion. She is trained as a mindfulness meditation teacher. She is also a Buddhist eco-chaplain, and she's also skilled in various nature-based embodiment practices. I am so excited to have her on the podcast today.
There's a whole other field of connection here with the natural world that we as a culture are very much out of attunement with and out of touch with. It is the nature and the pace of the way that we live our lives and kind of the way that culture steers us into believing, these things are important and we need to be productive and we need to do these things in order to feel worthy and seen and heard or whatever it might be. But I believe in many ways, the best thing we can do for ourselves and the rest of the world is to find this time to slow down and come into this more interior space.
Welcome to the conversation. I mean, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was so laser focused on getting to my treatments week to week, day by day. I couldn't see the path forward. And I remember when I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer, there was an end date, right? There was going to be a day where I was going to be finished with treatment, albeit still on hormonal therapies for, 5-10 years. However, I didn't have to go to all of these appointments and then I could get kind of back to life, back to work. But it was in that transition of getting back to work that I thought was the hardest piece of my experience with breast cancer because, well, everyone was excited to see me back and they had all this work waiting for me. My hair was back. Everyone thought I was normal and cured, if you will. That's when the psychological side of a breast cancer diagnosis really impacted me. And I realized I needed to create something to help with my own mental well-being, my physical well-being, my emotional well-being, to unpack this trauma that we went through with a breast cancer diagnosis. And so a lot of the work that we do at survivingbreastcancer.org that you're part of is kind of that psychosocial, like emotional, spiritual search for that meaning after being told you have cancer. So from meditation to we just started doing Reiki virtually, which is so cool. And then, you and I connected about this idea around forest bathing. And so, before we dive into what it is and how it can help and support and all of the magic it brings, can you share a little bit about your background? Because you have such a rich background and training that you've gone through to really develop into this role and teach.
Yeah, so education is part of it. So once I was diagnosed and going through what I call my whole, really was like a spiritual existential crisis in many ways. I set on the path to re-educate myself on life, right? So I already had a background. My undergraduate is in biology. I have a Master of Fine Arts, an artist, and was working for an arts nonprofit at the time, actually. And actually, my boss had been diagnosed with breast cancer twice. And
Oh, wow.
so she was the first person I called when I found out I was diagnosed. And she did remarkable things for me. And I will just share with you one thing she said to me that was memorable that I still hold true to this day. And it was, get all the information you can get. And
Yes.
it's scary to get information, especially if you keep going back and every time they tell you it's worse. I think that like 5 visits in a row, it was worse than they thought, worse than they thought, worse than they thought. But she actually really did save my life because I was diagnosed a year later again. And when they did the biopsy, they thought that they had gotten everything that they wanted to, but they couldn't reach this one spot. And I said, no, I need you to reach that one spot, get all the information you can get. And they did.
Yes.
It turns out that one spot was the cancer, and what they thought was the cancer wasn't.
Oh my goodness.
So it was so I say that she saved my life. Get all the information you can get always, no matter how scary that might be to face. Right.
Absolutely. So
Um,
you were diagnosed twice, both early stage
no,
or
my
no?
my first diagnosis was actually when I was first diagnosed, it was a stage 3C.
Okay.
And then they redid the staging and I was downgraded to a B.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I had 26 lymph nodes removed, 15 were positive.
Wow.
I deal with lymphedema in my right arm. I had to come to a deep acceptance on that, on having to wear a sleeve every day, having to wrap my arm twice in
Oh,
bandages every night to keep the pressure down. And I really have to be honest, I was kind of resisting it at first. I didn't want to believe that this was not going to cure itself. It wasn't. Um, and I turned it into a spiritual practice to wrap my arm every night.
wow.
So it's like, it's just something you do. It's just something I do now. This is my life now, right?
I also manage lymphedema, not as religiously as I probably should, because there's definitely, I'm not wearing a sleeve right now or anything, but, it has its flare ups. And then, my husband will also be like, okay, you need to put that sleeve back on, or you do need to wrap and, do the bandaging at night. And I joke that I'm like, after all this surgery and everything, I'm like the least sexiest person in bed right now. Like, I'm so bandaged up and like I have the hot flashes and all of these things. And I'm just like, stay on your side of the bed. I'll be over here with the window open.
It's so true. And it's, I feel like with breast cancer, so I had this breast removed. They thought it was early stage, but it wasn't. They did a second biopsy prior to the surgery and realized that it was, and that biopsy came back fine, but it picked up lymph nodes around it that had cancer in them. And so they realized that it was one of these sneaky kinds where it never grew a very big tumor. It just aggressively started moving out into the lymph. So it was on the move, as I say. So yeah, I mean, you go through breast cancer. I mean, depending on your journey, for sure, everyone has a different journey. But when you start losing your certainly your sense of bodily self, right? I mean, for me, I lost a breast, and you lose your hair, and I lost a tooth. It just like reabsorbed itself. So just the whole kind of, and then all my muscle mass going through chemo. I was just completely emaciated. I had been an athlete before, so it was just this very profound experience to look in the mirror and have missing a breast and having a breast, right? That's kind of a hard thing to reconcile. And also realizing that that I am not this body. Very deeply, I am not this body. I mean, yes, this is my body, but I am not this body. And I am actually, for lack of a better word, a soul, right? I'm a um, spiritual being having a human experience, I think is what they say, right? Um, so then I was able to walk around with that. I'm just going to say it was like a lesson, and see everybody as souls, as the light that they are, not in the body in the package that they have or present in that we see that's very material based, but rather in more energetically, more. It's really beautiful. For months, I could do that. So it was. That was a gift, and allows me to see through anything that might be on the surface of somebody, because I know no matter what, there's this very beautiful being inside, no matter what.
Let's take a quick break. We will be right back.
Are you ready to unlock your full potential? I want to introduce you to the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, a powerful resource to transform your life today. With expert interviews, practical tips, and inspiring stories, this podcast is your roadmap to lasting wellness. Here's what a listener has to say.
I used to struggle with my health, but this podcast changed everything. It's like having a personal trainer, nutritionist, and life coach totally for free.
With over 2,000 five-star reviews, we're a podcast you can trust. The Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
I resonate with that so much too. I literally, and some people on my listeners might have heard me say this on other podcasts, I literally wanted to put something on my forehead to say, like, this is not me. Because I was like, luckily my friends and family who I knew kind of that line in the sand, like the pre-cancer, like they knew who I was. But then this opportunity of when I'm meeting like new colleagues at work or new neighbors move in the neighborhood, like they don't know who I was. They see this woman who gained a whole bunch of weight because of all the steroids I was on and the fatigue and the muscle and joint pain. So I wasn't even inclined to like work out. I loved doing yoga. And after my surgery, I lost that upper body strength and was like, yoga that was supposed to be this healing practice became very triggering for me because I was not as limber as I used to be. Right. And so how do I find, this new path forward? And I love this idea of, understanding the energy and the light, because so many of us walk every day, like who you're standing next to, waiting in line for your coffee or on the bus or any of these things. We carry so much deep within us that's not on the surface that we can always see.
That's so very true. And we don't know everybody's story, right? I mean, we know what we're going through, but we don't know what everyone else has gone through. And sometimes even that could be surprising to learn. But I think the thing that strikes me about breast cancer is that it affects your body like systemically, holistically, in a way that is multi-dimensional, it's layered, right? So I was diagnosed at 44, premenopausal, so drop kicked into menopause, like boom, on chemo, drop kicked into the whole thing, right? I had my ovaries out by the end of the year. So I was estrogen positive cancer. And, and not having that hormone in your body really changes your body a lot, a lot. I mean, your joint, like you had already mentioned, joint pain and your bone health and your hormonal health, even your sex drive, everything changes. And I don't know that people realize, and especially if you have lost, body part, like your breasts, that you're a woman, these are your breasts, these have been with you, right? And you lose them and they're no longer there anymore. And I did not have reconstructive surgery, but it affects it much differently, and then also if you went through chemo and lost your hair, it's a much different journey than maybe some other diagnoses, but it really hits hard on many, many levels of the body.
You bring up such a great point too about the role estrogen plays. I mean, there's a reason why we're created with estrogen in our body. So when you deplete that, not just through natural menopause, but literally through like almost down to zero, depleting your body of this hormone that serves a function. Granted, ours was overexpressed and we had too much of it. But at the same time, like the cognitive health, mental health, like, and the physical. So yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
My oncologist calls it Uber menopause. I was calling it menopause plus. I'm like, I'm menopause plus, and I take exemestane now.
When did you get into forest bathing and kind of this other path?
Once I was diagnosed, my re-education included a number of courses to everything from end-of-life doula training, because I very much wanted to, serve that time of life. I've always felt kind of a connection to that period of life, but of course, then COVID hit, so that wasn't going to be, any way that I could serve initially. But also doing a lot of mindfulness training, and oh my gosh, I should just get out my list of everything. Honestly, and I was also, a naturalist and guiding naturalist walks in town. So this connection with nature has always been there. And then what I like to say is, oh my gosh, I got to know your name, you plant, whatever, you tree, whatever you are. And now I know your spirit and going through this journey, in a very different way than I knew before. And so I have since trained with Jack Kornfield and Tara Brock in their mindfulness meditation teacher training program. I trained with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs, I think is the title, to get trained in this work. And so how it happened, Laura, was I knew I wanted to give back to this world. I mean, like everybody, I have no idea how long I have, right? I really don't know, but it's very profound now. It's very much a day to day, and every day is really a miracle, and we can stop and pause into that miracle of life. And so I had to learn how to ask for help, which is hard because I feel like I can do it all. I want to be able to do it all. And it's really hard to surrender. It's actually what I did. I had a day a few months in where I recognized that I needed to actually acknowledge surrender and kind of lift this up to whatever higher power is there, whatever that might be, and know that this is beyond, for example, me eating 8 cups of kale a day. There isn't enough cups of kale that I could eat or blueberries that I could eat necessarily. It could be helpful, right? So the surrender, and then also knowing before I was diagnosed, I would say maybe about a month before I was diagnosed, the trees that are behind me that you see on the screen here, I live on a hill, so I got to walk up the hill and the trees are here. I don't know how to say this other than to say they were calling to me. And it's like not in words, but for lack of a better description, energetically, like there was this draw towards them, and I didn't really know what that was about. And then I was diagnosed. I lost my brother a few weeks before being diagnosed. It was like boom, boom, and right. So once I was diagnosed, I thought to myself, oh my gosh. And now I know why you're calling. I don't know, like I'm listening, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like I'm listening, I'm open, and so it was through this relationship with trees, believe it or not, that my healing was taking place. And I recognized that. And I wanted the trees or the forest, however it all connects, to know that I know that, And so I walked up to the trees one day, and the words are never exactly perfect. They come out as they do, no matter the words, I think the trees know what I mean, right? But I asked for help. I said, please help heal me so I can help heal you. And what I meant, there's a whole other field of connection here with the natural world that we as a culture are very much out of attunement with and out of touch with. And I believe it is absolutely essential and part of our holistic health and our sense of belonging to recover, restore, renew that relationship. And so I have made, I guess I would almost say, a vow to the forest that, so long as I shall breathe, it will be my work to bring humans and nature together again for mutual thriving, for the flourishing of all. And forest bathing, forest therapy was the first practice I could find that was already kind of doing something like that without having to invent a wheel or another. So I thought I'd go try that on first, and I did. And
Did you know this was a practice? Did you know this was
I
like
didn't know
a
before.
thing? Okay.
I mean, you know what it is? It was like, so I was diagnosed in 2018. So I think every so often you'd see an article in the New York Times or something like that around research about the benefits of nature in this practice called forest bathing. But I really didn't know anything about it, honestly. So I learned about it, got trained, and started offering walks, and really felt called to amplify this out on a bigger scale than my little rural town, which I love. So I, decided I wanted to teach it in a mindfulness based container. That's how I would teach it. And co-founded the Forest Therapy School in 2021, and we've trained over 400 students around
Amazing.
the world. Around the world, it's such a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they can amplify it out in their communities and bring awareness to how important it is to connect with our earth.
I love everything you just said. I feel like I'm going to listen to this podcast and just replay these last like 20 minutes because and I'm sharing this too now that I'm more like vocal about my career transition, leaving my full-time day job to focusing on survivingbreastcancer.org and other initiatives that may present themselves is what you're saying is like being in tune with like what our purpose is. I hear this a lot and I don't know if we all know how to practice it. There's those energies that are just around us that we just need to be open to. So how do we open ourselves up to receive and to have this innate sense of like intuition and answer, right? Like it's bigger than us, but there's kind of like these vibrations and frequencies that are with us that we have been, at least in my experience, like I'm in my car, I'm driving down the highway, I'm stuck in traffic, I'm probably listening to a podcast or blaring some music just to get out some angst, in front of my computer 24 like 8 hours of the day, get back in my car, go back home, sit for dinner, like I'm not moving, I'm very static desk job. And then like I take my dog out for a walk and you're like, wow, like I'm breathing fresh air. I'm getting my heart up. Like I'm with my animal and my nature. Like, and it's like so easy, but we don't do it.
I know. Walking actually is really good. And if you're walking for exercise or walking just to go on a slow walk, or you're intentionally doing a more mindful walk, any and all of that is really great. I think there are benefits just, alone in walking, even with settling your brain waves, for example.
Yes.
That can be very helpful. There's a theory called attention restoration theory, because you just spoke about working so much all day. And it's exactly as it says, if you spend time in the natural world in a setting that feels supportive to you and you feel safe, right? And you allow yourself to settle in right where you are, you can come into what they call soft fascination. And so you're not hard focused on anything. You're sort of being with what is now. The leaves are blowing in the trees, so on and so forth, can actually shift your brain waves to restore your attention. And so that's why it can feel so refreshing to go for a walk or to go sit with nature. And even just that, anybody, I mean, we've been doing this for forever, because as humans, all animals do this, but now it's formally named a practice, if you will, called the sit spot. Have you heard of that before, Laura?
No, I haven't. Tell me.
So a sit spot is very simply find a place that's close to you, that's convenient to you. It could be right outside your door, a park, wherever that might be, and visit that place somewhat regularly. For if you can get 20 minutes, that's great, but 10 minutes is great too. And really, it's about coming into connection with place, coming into connection with the natural world. So you're going to be noticing. It's called a sit spot, so that's your spot to go, and you might be kind of approaching it in sort of an investigative way, like who's here today? Oh, there's a squirrel, there's a chipmunk, right? Sort of taking inventory of who's around. If you do stay about 20 minutes, any birds that might have flushed out when you arrived will be coming back. They'll beginning to, accept you as part of the nature there. But it is a practice, and you can deepen into place through the seasons and the weather, and be with that one place as your special place to be for your you time. You can close your eyes and meditate and allow, be receptive through sound and smell and touch. Feel the sun, feel the breeze. Allow yourself to open, as you were saying also, Laura, receive. So I have an acronym. I don't know that I have all the letters exactly down, but it's sort of like this. It's to allow ourselves to soar, SOAR, to soar like a bird. Open, settle in. Once you're settled, you feel settled, the mind is settled, the body is getting settled. Allow yourself to begin to unfold and open to where you are, attune to where you are. So what are you maybe seeing? What are you hearing? What are you smelling? So it's a sensory practice, right? Attuning to the environment. Are the clouds moving? Whatever might be there. Might even close your eyes. And when you close your eyes, you can actually hear sounds better. Same with scent, same with taste, same with touch, right? And then the R here being receive, receive, but you're also reciprocating. You're giving back just by giving your presence. So it's this beautiful, it is simply being out and with nature, the way that we have been 99.97% of our, entire existence as humans for, 250,000 years. It's been only recent history that we've become such endured technology-based creatures.
It's getting worse. I fear.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Like this idea of like unplug and,
Mhm.
just to, like double back on what we were talking about, this idea of like taking a walk, getting outside. How many times like I go for my walk and I like grab my headphones, I want to call my parents or call my friends. Like I have to be multitasking. This idea of like leave it at home, literally just go outside. And can you be comfortable in what might feel uncomfortable without your technology, without listening to music or the podcast or calling a friend, but just being in the present moment, as you were mentioning, like what do you smell and hear around you? Even if you're not in nature, like, I'm in Boston, like there's city sounds, right? But like the traffic, the cars, the gasoline smells. I mean, maybe not the most pleasant, but just like you're outside and this is your environment. So you can be like present in that moment. And as you're describing some of this, I was thinking, I'm looking at the beautiful background that you have with the trees and lush lawn. But this also is something that I think we practice when we go on vacation and why vacations can be so restorative. I'm thinking, oh, yes, I will so sit in the beach and stick my toes in the sand and like feel the texture and feel the water and the ocean and the salt smell. And then we come back from vacation and you're like, wow, that was so great. But how can we create these like 20-minute power naps or these 20-minute like, sit spots that can rejuvenate us without like needing to plan it like, 3 times a year?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can get your daily dose, right? Every day, but it's just about being intentional to see that this is to recognize that connecting in this way is part of your health and part of your healing. And so it's making that decision to say, I'm not going to turn the podcast on. I'm going to just be with whatever is present now. And that's the other thing that I want to say, that is where the mindfulness part comes in, is no matter what is in your environment, you mentioned being more urban, accepting whatever is here now as part of that experience and not pushing it away, because that sort of counteracts your relaxation, right? Or your moment of restoration and connection. So, okay, name it, traffic, what else might be there? Mechanical sounds in the background. Okay, mechanical sounds, but you might also be able to come in to hear a sound that is joyful and focus your attention there. So maybe there is a bird call that you hear every so often, or maybe you do hear, maybe there are some trees nearby and you can hear the breeze, or maybe you see some beautiful flowers somebody has on their patio or steps or something, and you can focus your attention there. And so you can choose how and where you focus your attention.
You have been teaching forest bathing to our community for some time. And I remember the first time I didn't know what to expect. You were introducing this to me and I was in awe for how you brought nature into the home. You utilized, sound and music, but your voice and this idea of touch and using our senses to, think through, are we sitting on that wooden chair? Or is there bamboo or the fabric that came from plants to have the cushion? and really bringing nature to where we were, or if you're not outside, like maybe you have a plant in your house that you could look at. And so talk to me a little bit about, some of these other maybe non-conventional ways of experiencing forest bathing, like right here in our homes.
What I like to say is, everything is nature, right? Everything, even if it's been, even if humans have synthesized it, we've synthesized it from the earth, right? So it's all earthly, with the exception of a few meteorites that might be here. Even those are, cosmic and stardust and so on and so forth. But yeah, so beginning to see where you live as being made of the natural world. So where is there wood in your home? And what is wood? But wood is tree. So if you have wooden floors, you are walking on trees, right? Trim around your windows, trees. Your door, if it's wood, tree. So these are all trees that were standing and growing from the earth at one point in time that are now part of your home, you know? And so there's also any kind of food that you have, fruits, vegetables, spices, that's all was grown somewhere and is now inside your home. If you have fresh cut flowers, if you have shells or stones or sticks, like little beautiful sticks or sculptures that you might have, anything like that brings nature in. And I even go as far as to say, I don't think I say this on the call, but even if we think about glass, our glass windows, we could go back and say that they are mountains. The erosion of mountains coming down, creating sand eventually, and then the silica and the sand creating then windows. So we can see that, each material that our home is made with has its own journey, and it's all an earthly one.
For someone who's just trying to get into this, meditative practice or understanding the connection between, the human lived experience and, the nature and world around us, how, like, there's probably not like a right answer, but like, how often would you have to practice? I guess my question is with like what we're describing and talking about today, like what could someone expect as they're like entering into this journey?
Yeah, and I think you hit the kind of the nail on the head, if you will, when you said practice. That you practice, So I will tell you, and much to what you were describing there already, is that the number one hardest thing for people to do is slow down. It seems so easy, and yet it is so hard to slow the mind down, to slow the body down, to come to a really slow pace of being immersed in the natural world, or even for a slow, mindful walk. It's really hard. But it can happen quickly for some people. So I had someone who had never come forest bathing before, and we are at a little museum in town here where I guide them on their beautiful campus. But we have I-95 nearby, and you can hear it. And their woodland trail is a small little woodland trail. And so when we do forest bathing, the way I typically do the walks is we'll begin with a little bit of mindful movement, and then I'll guide us through a seated meditation practice called a sensory awareness or awakening meditation. And then I'll offer a series of invitations to engage with the natural world. And those invitations are your solo time. So I might, send you out for 10 minutes, for example, right? And then I'll call you back. When we call back, we have a chance to share with everybody anything that you noticed or saw. And we kind of weave together the story of the land. And it can be a really beautiful thing. I mean, even people's childhood memories come up, so you never know what's going to show up on a walk, but it surprises me every time at how each person brings something back that's different than the next person that they noticed and that resonated with them. And it's all happening. It's all alive right there at the same time. So I had this woman on the first invitation walk, I don't even know, maybe the first 3 or 4 minutes of the invitation. And I walked back on the trail to meet her. I had stepped forward a little bit I have to take a little picnic basket with me. I forgot to mention we end the walks with a little bit of tea together. So I have in my basket is my tea for everybody. And so I walked back on the trail to meet her there, and she looked at me with these giant eyes. She's probably, I'm going to guess, in her 60s somewhere, huge eyes. And she said, "Where have I been all my life?" Just, because it is the nature and the pace of the way that we live our lives, and kind of the way that culture steers us into believing, these things are important and we need to be productive and we need to do these things in order to feel worthy and seen and heard, or whatever it might be. But I believe in many ways, the best thing we can do for ourselves and the rest of the world is to find this time to slow down and come into this more interior space. But also, when it comes to the natural world, we're talking about the way we perceive it is that there's an outer landscape, like what's around us, what's surrounding us, all the many beings, all the life. And then there's what we might perceive of as our inner landscape. And it's bringing those two together and merging that. And that happens. I think research has said it takes about, believe it or not, 90 minutes to really drop in to being in nature and losing a sense of time, if you will, letting go of your tasks and your to-do lists and your grocery run thinking and all of that stuff. It takes about 90 minutes before all of that is gone and you are fully present. But it can also happen much more quickly. And the more that you practice, the more that can, the more you can drop in. Yeah. And so I think to answer your question, is different for each person. How intentional you are about it is certainly part of it. And if you have a practice already in place where you can slow down and you've been practicing that, your meditation, whatever it might be, that will prime you a little more for this. But I feel that, no matter what, when people come, they receive something from it, whether it's profound and transformative for them. Many people will say, who come on their first walk will say, I am never going to be walking the same in nature again. It's just been I've never spent time with nature this way, and I know people who are involved in conservation organizations that and even environmental attorneys and so on and so forth, who believe they're so fully, deeply connected to the natural world. And I bring them on one of these walks and they're like, wait a minute, I hike all the time. I do this, I do that. I've never looked up at the trees before. I've never gotten down close like this before. I have never experienced the forest like this. And I have been advocating for the earth and my environmental efforts for decades. And I have never had an experience like this. So, it can be really beautiful. And I think you can practice this, of course, on your own. And I think if you can find a forest bathing or forest therapy guide in your area, that can be helpful also. And then you have the benefit of practicing in community, of sharing with others and integrating that time. And that can be really beautiful too.
I love that. Yeah, my husband and I are avid hikers, and you're absolutely right. We're like looking down so we don't trip, right? So we're not looking up at the trees, and the destination is the summit, right? It's like, what is that path to get through? Let's not fall, twist an ankle, and then get on top. And when you're on top, you're like, oh, look at these amazing views. But then we just missed like the 2.5 hours that it took us to get there outside of like, all right, this was a good workout. But one of the interesting things, one of my favorite hikes, it's called Lonesome Lake up in New Hampshire, in Franconia Notch. And it's this beautiful, like, it's where I also take people, like, if they're just getting into hiking, because it's like 2 miles up, 2 miles down, moderate. But on top of the hike there's a lake there. And so, like, in this mountain, you're like, 4,000, not quite 4,000, maybe 3,000 feet up from sea level. And there's like this beautiful thing of water. I have yet to jump into it because it's always been way too cold for me, but you can go swimming in it. And you're looking over this beautiful ridge, and it's so beautiful. We always pack a lunch and get up there. And when we're hiking down, though, probably around like 1,500 feet or something, that's when you start hearing the cars on 93, right? And so it's this also interesting, like, literally, like, you get to this threshold of you no longer hear the city sounds, but then when you're coming down, you're like, oh, we must be close to the cars. We're almost done. This is over. You can start hearing the sounds of the traffic. But it's just so interesting to be like in tune to like all of those moments on that path. I appreciate you just enlightening me of like how we can be more present and focused on, the granite that we're like literally walking on.
Yes, absolutely. And when you mention that, that's, this practice is an embodiment practice. That's what I think is so powerful about it, because we are sensory beings, right? But we also feel that connection with the earth, whether we're sitting on the earth or walking with the earth, whatever that might be, making that connection and becoming very aware of, walking and knowing you were walking, or sitting and knowing you were sitting, and leaning into what that feels like to walk or sit upon the earth. Mm-hmm. Rather than having our thoughts all in our mind and we're just kind of carrying our bodies around, right? I mean, that's kind of what we typically do. And so, I mean, it's hard to be in that place all the time, but if you can touch in with it a few times throughout the day, I think it's hugely, hugely helpful and very positive. There was University of Derby did a research work around, I think what they call noticing 3 things in nature. And if you write down 3 things that you notice in nature each day, these would be positive experiences, preferably. But 3 things that you notice in nature that bring you joy. And you do that for a couple of weeks, a week or 2, you will strengthen your nature connection, and you'll also feel more joy, and you'll also feel more gratitude, because that's what nature connection does. It opens us up into this wider picture of being a part of something so much more than just our human communities.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to encourage our listeners to also do that. Let's do this together, where for the next 2 weeks, we'll write down every day the 3 things in nature that brought us joy that day, and then regroup. Oh my God, I'm curious to see what I find, what I discover. That's like a tangible takeaway. I really appreciate that, Regan. That's really great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Ah. And I also can see too, as we're thinking about navigating such a traumatic cancer diagnosis, how can this help settle the mind when you're sitting in that crazy infusion chair for hours on end, right? And so, maybe there are flowers in the hospital setting, or when you're looking out the window and you're experiencing the sunlight coming through, right? These are, in very high stress, vulnerable situations. How can we use this forest bathing practice to just help us be present and heal?
I mean, if you're going in for treatments, certainly I know I spoke to the natural world before I went in the building. You made connection that morning at some point. So carrying that in my heart, if you will. And then you can bring something with you. Maybe it's a stone. Something actually like a stone holds a nice amount of weight and can feel really comforting in the hand. So if you want to bring something from the natural world in with you, sure. And maybe there are flowers that maybe at the nurses' stations or something like that. And maybe there are windows. Windows are hugely helpful. When we can see a way out, it's just helpful. Even if it's sky, whatever is out there, it's great if you have that. You don't always have that. When I did chemo at the hospital, they had everybody, it was one big giant room, and we were all lined along the outside edges of it. And the only windows were above us, like these little square windows up here. Now they've redone everything, and there are rooms that you go in and you can see out. And it's a completely different experience than feeling like you're in this institution of fluorescent lights, lined up around the walls, But what else can be really helpful too is if you bring, I don't know, a device with you, your phone, your computer, whatever it might be, and have nature sounds. Listening to nature sounds, very healing. Bird song, trees and wind. You can Google YouTube forest sounds or forest. There are a bunch of people who have done beautiful audios of forest.
Amazing.
And you can even watch the pictures, or even bringing in a book that's about nature and reading that can be very nourishing too.
So many amazing takeaways, Regan. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to share with our listeners?
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure to share this. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I would say for me, this practice is really about, that full sense of coming alive inside, of opening yourself to life, of letting it flow through you and feeling, the fullest you can alive in the moment of your life,
And how you started to saying that we are souls living in this human experience right now. I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for spending this time with us.
Thank you so much, Laura. Have a beautiful day.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast is from personal experiences and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you are looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Our show is made possible by our nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org, and by our incredible donors like yourself. You can hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org to sign up for our mailing list, make a donation, and explore the 400+ programs we offer each year at survivingbreastcancer.org/events. Until next time, keep on thriving.